we made earlier, that's up. And then second tweet is the link to the notes, which has all of the Department of Justice articles we're going to read through. Feel free to come up. Please tweet out the space. Um, let people know we're in here. How you doing, Mr. Davis? So check out the notes in the Jumbotron with the links to read along. I'm about to put the FNN live stream in the Jumbotron so people can watch along. And then we'll get started shortly. Okay, the link is up in there now, so you can click the live stream to follow along. We're going to have a discussion. I'm going to read through the press release and then the two indictments, and then we'll have a discussion. But yeah, make sure you guys tweet out the room, the Twitter space, so people can find it and join the conversation with us, so we can give people the updates about Breonna Taylor. Okay, so these things are probably about like a 5 to 10 minute read each, so it'll take us to probably like 30 minutes, but I'll try to be relatively fast. So if y'all want to follow along, I'm reading through the press release that they put out, the Department of Justice put out. So here we go. Current and former Louisville, Kentucky police officers charged with federal crimes related to death of Breonna Taylor. Charges include federal civil rights offenses, unlawful conspiracies, obstruction offenses, and the use of excessive force. A federal grand jury in Louisville, Kentucky returned 2 indictments that were unsealed today, and the Department of Justice filed a third charging document today in connection with an investigation into the circumstances surrounding the death of Breonna Taylor. A 26-year-old woman who was shot and killed in her Louisville home on March 13, 2020, by police officers executing a search warrant, and it was actually a no-knock warrant. The Justice Department has charged 4 current and former Louisville Metro Police Department officers with federal crimes related to Breonna Taylor's death, said Attorney General Merrick B. Garland. Among other things, the federal charges announced today allege that members of LMPD's Place-Based Investigations Unit falsified the affidavit used to obtain the search warrant of Ms. Taylor's home, that this act violated federal civil rights laws, and that those violations resulted in Ms. Taylor's death. Breonna Taylor should be alive today. The Justice Department is committed to defending and protecting the civil rights of every person in this country. That was this department's founding purpose. How you doing, April? That was this department's founding purpose, and it remains our urgent mission. On March 13th, 2020, Breonna Taylor should have awakened in her home as usual, but tragically she did not, said Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark. How you doing, free one? Excuse me. Since the founding of our nation, the Bill of Rights to the United States Constitution has guaranteed that all people have a right to be secure in their homes and free from false warrants, unreasonable searches, and the use of unjustifiable and excessive force by the police. These indictments reflect the Justice Department's commitment to preserving the integrity of the criminal justice system and to protecting the constitutional rights of every American. The first indictment charges former Louisville Metro Police Department LMPD detective Joshua James, where did his name go? 40 years old, and current LMPD Sergeant Kyle Meany, 35 years old, with federal civil rights and obstruction offenses for their roles in preparing and approving a false search warrant affidavit that resulted in Taylor's death. The second indictment charges former LMPD Detective Brett Hankinson, 46, with civil rights offenses for firing his service weapon into Taylor's apartment through a covered window and covered glass door. The third charging document, and information filed by the Department of Justice, charges LMPD Detective Kelly Goodlett with conspiring with James to falsify the search warrant for Taylor's home and to cover up their actions afterward. The first indictment charges James and Meany in connection with the allegedly false warrant, contains 4 counts. Count 1 charges James and Meany, while acting in their official capacity as officers, willfully deprived Taylor of her constitutional rights by drafting and approving a false affidavit to obtain a search warrant for Taylor's home. The indictment alleges that James and Meany knew that the affidavit contained false and misleading statements, omitted material facts, relied on stale information, and was not supported by probable cause. The indictment also alleges that James and Meany knew that the execution of the search warrant would be carried out by armed LMPD officers and could create dangerous situations both for the officers and for anyone who happened to be in Taylor's home. According to the charges, the officers tasked with executing the warrant were not involved in drafting the warrant affidavit and were not aware that it was false. This count alleges that the offense resulted in Taylor's death. Count 2 charges James with conspiracy for agreeing with another detective to cover up the false warrant affidavit after Taylor's death by drafting a false investigation letter and making false statements to criminal investigators. Count 3 charges James with falsifying a report with the intent to impede a criminal investigation into Taylor's death. Count 4 charges Meany with making a false statement to federal investigators. The second indictment against Hankinson includes 2 civil rights charges alleging that Hankinson willfully used unconstitutionally excessive force while acting in his official capacity as an officer, when he fired his service weapon into Taylor's apartment through a covered window and covered glass door. Count 1 charges him with depriving Taylor and a person staying with Taylor in her apartment of their constitutional rights by firing shots through a bedroom window that was covered with blinds and a blackout curtain. Count 2 charges Hankinson with depriving 3 of Taylor's neighbors of their constitutional rights by firing shots through a sliding door that was covered with blinds and a curtain. The indictment alleges that several of Hankinson's bullets traveled through the wall of Taylor's home and into the apartment unit occupied by her neighbors. Both counts allege that Hankinson used a dangerous weapon and that his conduct involved an attempt to kill. The information charging Goodlett with conspiracy contains 1 count. It charges Goodlett with conspiring with James to falsify the warrant affidavit for Taylor's home and file a false report to cover up the false affidavit. All of the civil rights charges involve alleged violations of the Title 18 United States Code, Section 242, which makes it a crime for an official acting under color of law, meaning an official who is using or abusing authority given to that person by the government to willfully violate a person's constitutional rights. A violation of this statute carries a statutory maximum sentence of life imprisonment where the violation results in death or involves an attempt to kill. The obstruction counts charged in the indictment carry a statutory maximum sentence of 20 years, and the conspiracy counts carry a statutory maximum of 5 years, as does the false statement charges. Actual sentences in case of conviction are determined by a judge. The charges announced today are separate from the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division pattern or practice investigation into Louisville's Metro government and the Louisville Metro Police Department, which Attorney General Garland announced on April 26, 2021. The charges announced today are criminal against individual officers, while the ongoing pattern or practice investigation is a civil investigation that is examining allegations of systemic violations of the Constitution and federal law by LMPD and Louisville Metro. The civil pattern or practice investigation is being handled independently from the criminal case by a different team of career staff. The charges announced today are also separate from the charges previously filed by the Commonwealth of Kentucky against Hankinson related to the shooting at Taylor's home. The federal charges allege violations of the U.S. Constitution rather than of state law. The federal charges also allege excessive use of force with respect to Taylor and a person staying in her apartment, violations not included in the Commonwealth's case. These federal cases were investigated by the FBI Louisville Field Office. Trial attorneys Michael J. Sonner and Anna Gutfried of the Civil Rights Division are prosecuting the cases, with Assistant U.S. Attorney Zachary Dimbo of the Eastern District of Kentucky. So that's the press release. They also link on here 2 indictments. One is for Hankinson, the other is for James and Meany. They're relatively short, so I did want to read them so we can get used to understanding and breaking down grand juries and indictments and stuff like that when it comes to civil rights abuses. So I'm going to read through the first one against Hankinson. It's about 4 pages. So, indictment. The grand jury charges at the time of this indictment, Breonna Taylor was a 26-year-old woman. Actually, let me share this screen now. Share screen. Okay, so y'all can follow along. Okay, at the time of the material to this indictment, excuse me. 1, Breonna Taylor was a 26-year-old woman. Oh, did you want to say something, Freed One?
Yeah, I do have a quick question. Is this the people who charge her? Is it different from the Kentucky Attorney General?
Yes, the Attorney General for the United States is head of the DOJ, basically, Department of Justice, and they handle charging people federally. They're kind of like the country's Attorney General rather than a state Attorney General. And these are charges coming from the federal Attorney General.
So could the Kentucky Attorney General, could he have charged these officers with these same charges?
Not all of them, considering they are about violations of the Constitution. But in the cases where they have to deal with state law in Kentucky, they totally could have. And that was a lot of the beef earlier, that they hadn't done enough to charge these officers with the crime in the state.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, so let's go through this first indictment against Hankinson. 1, Breonna Taylor was a 26-year-old woman from Louisville, Kentucky, who, as of March 12 to 13, 2020, had lived for several years in a 2-bedroom apartment at 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment 4. 2, Kenneth Walker, KW, was a 28-year-old man from Louisville, Kentucky, who had a personal relationship with Taylor. On or around March 12 to 13, 2020, Kenneth Walker was staying with Taylor at 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment 4. 3, CN, then a 24-year-old woman, ZF, then a 3-year-old boy, and CE, then a 20-year-old man, lived next door to Taylor in apartment 3. 4, Brett Hankinson was a Louisville Metro Police Department detective who had worked at LMPD for approximately 17 years. 5, on March 12, 2020, LMPD's Place-Based Investigations Unit, PBI, obtained warrants to search 5 properties as part of a narcotics investigation. These properties included Taylor's home. 6, 7 LMPD officers executed the search warrant at Taylor's home at approximately 12:45 a.m. on March 13, 2020. 7, when officers broke down the door to apartment 4, Kenneth Walker immediately fired 1 shot with a handgun that he lawfully possessed. 2, LMPD officers in the doorway immediately returned fire into Taylor's apartment with their service weapons. Brett Hankinson then moved from the doorway to the side of the apartment and fired 10 more shots through a window and a sliding glass door, both of which were covered with blinds and curtains. Paragraphs 1 through 7 are hereby incorporated by reference into the counts set forth below. The grand jury further charges, on or about March 13, 2020, in the Western District of Kentucky, Brent Hankinson, while acting under color of law, willfully deprived Breonna Taylor and KW of the right secured and protected by the Constitution and laws of the United States to be free from unreasonable seizures, specifically during a seizure of Breonna Taylor and KW by officers executing a search warrant. And after there was no longer a lawful objective justifying the use of deadly force, Brett Hankinson fired 5 shots through a bedroom window that was covered with blinds and a blackout curtain. The offense involved the use of a dangerous weapon and an attempt to kill, all in violation of Title 18, United States Code 242. The grand jury further charges count 2, deprivation of rights under color of law. On or about March 13, 2020, in the Western District of Kentucky, Brett Hankinson, while acting under the color of law, willfully deprived CN, ZF, and CE of the right secured and protected by the Constitution and laws of the United States to be free from the deprivation of liberty without due process of law, which includes the right to be free from an officer's use of unjustified force that shocks the conscience. Specifically, after there was no longer a lawful objective justifying the use of deadly force, Brett Hankinson fired 5 bullets into the living room of apartment 4 through a sliding glass door that was covered with blinds and a curtain. Multiple bullets traveled through the wall of apartment 4 and into apartment 3, endangering CN, ZF, and CE. The offense involved the use of a dangerous weapon and an attempt to kill, all in violation of Title 18, United States Code 242. So that's the first indictment against Hankinson. The second indictment is against Joshua James and Kyle Meany. So I'll read to that really quickly and then we'll open up to discussion. So let me share this screen now. By the way, the link is in the Jumbotron if anybody wants to read along. And then you can watch the video if you want to watch along. Okay. Indictment. The grand jury charges, at the times material to this indictment, 1, Breonna Taylor was a 26-year-old woman from Louisville, Kentucky, who as of March 2020 had lived for several years at 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment 4. 2, the Louisville Metro Police Department, LMPD, in late 2019 formed a unit called Place-Based Investigations, PBI. In early 2020, PBI was investigating alleged narcotics trafficking that was centered in the West End area of Louisville, approximately 10 miles away from Taylor's home. 3, Kyle Meany was an LMPD sergeant who supervised the PBI. He had been employed as an LMPD officer since 2013. 4, Joshua James was a detective in the PBI unit who, as of early 2020, had worked at LMPD for approximately 15 years. 5, KG was a detective in the PBI unit who had worked for LMPD for approximately 8 years. 6, on March 12, 2020, PBI, using affidavits sworn by Joshua James and approved by Kyle Meany, obtained warrants to search 5 properties. These included 4 properties in Louisville's West End neighborhood that were allegedly used in drug trafficking, as well as Taylor's home. The primary target of the investigation was JG, a man who had previously arrested for committing drug offenses. 7, Joshua James and Kyle Meany knew that the affidavit used to obtain the warrant to search Taylor's home contained information that was false, misleading, and out of date, that the affidavit omitted material information, and that the officers lacked probable cause for the search. 8, Joshua James and Kyle Meany knew that the execution of the search warrant would be carried out by armed LMPD officers and could create a dangerous situation both for the officers and for anyone who happened to be in Taylor's home. 9, on March 13, 2020, at approximately 12:45 a.m., LMPD officers who had not been involved in drafting the search warrant and who were unaware of the false statements contained therein executed the warrant at Taylor's home. When those officers broke down the door to the apartment, a guest in Taylor's home, Kenneth Walker, believing that intruders were breaking in, immediately fired 1 shot with a handgun that he lawfully possessed, hitting the first officer at the door. 2 LMPD officers immediately fired a total of 22 shots into the apartment. And one of the shots hit Breonna Taylor in the chest. A third officer moved from the doorway to the side, excuse me, to the side of the apartment and fired 10 more shots through a window and a sliding glass door, both of which were covered with blinds and curtains. 10. Taylor died from the wound to her chest, and paragraphs 1 through 10 are hereby incorporated by reference into the count set forth below. This grand jury further charges count 1, deprivation of rights under color of law. On or about March 12, 2020, in the Western District of Kentucky, Joshua James and Kyle Meany, while acting under color of law and while aiding and abetting each other and other officers, willfully caused Breonna Taylor to be deprived of the right, secured and protected by the Constitution and the laws of the United States, to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. Specifically, Joshua James drafted and swore out a warrant affidavit for Taylor's home, knowing that the warrant would be executed by other armed LMPD officers, and knowing at the time that the affidavit contained false and misleading statements, omitted material information, relied on stale information, and was not supported by probable cause. Kyle Meany approved the warrant affidavit for Taylor's home, knowing that the warrant would be executed by other armed LMPD officers, and knowing at the time that the affidavit contained false and misleading statements, omitted material information, relied on stale information, and was not supported by probable cause. The offense involved the use of a dangerous weapon and resulted in Taylor's death, all in violations of Title 18, United States Code, Section 242 and 2B. The grand jury further charges count 2, conspiracy, beginning not later than or around April 2020 and continuing until in or around June 2022 in the Western District of Kentucky and elsewhere. Joshua James knowingly and willfully conspired and agreed with KG and others known and unknown to the grand jury to commit offenses against the United States, specifically 1, to knowingly falsify a document with the intent to impede, obstruct, and influence the investigation and proper administration of a matter within the jurisdiction of the FBI, a federal agency, in violation of 18 United States Code 1519, and 2, to knowingly engage in misleading conduct toward another person with the intent to hinder, delay, and prevent the communication of information to a federal law enforcement officer and judge relating to the commission and possible commission of a federal offense in violation of 18 United States Code 1512 B3. Manner, means, and object of the conspiracy. 1. The object of the conspiracy was to cover up the fact that the Springfield Drive warrant affidavit was false, misleading, stale, and unsupported by probable cause by 1, submitting a false investigation letter, and 2, making false statements to criminal investigators. 2. It was part of the manner and means of the conspiracy for Joshua James and KG to adopt, repeat, and expand upon the Springfield Drive warrant affidavit's false and misleading claims in an official investigative letter that they provided to criminal investigators on or about May 1st, 2020. 3. It was further part of the manner and means of the conspiracy for Joshua James and KG to call, text, and meet with each other to discuss the false information in the Springfield Drive warrant affidavit and to coordinate their false cover story in an attempt to escape responsibility for their roles in preparing the warrant affidavit that contained false information. 4. It was further part of the manner and means of the conspiracy for Joshua James to contact other officers and pressure them to provide support for the false information in the Springfield Drive warrant affidavit. 5. It was further part of the manner and means of the conspiracy for Joshua James and KG to make false and misleading statements during interviews with criminal investigators. Overt acts. In furtherance of the conspiracy and to accomplish its objectives, Joshua James and his conspirators committed the following overt acts, among others. 1. In or around April or May 2020, after the March 13, 2020 shooting of Breonna Taylor, and let's call it a lynching, Joshua James called JM, a fellow LMPD officer, to try to get JM to say that he had previously told Joshua James that JG had received packages at Taylor's apartment. In fact, JM had told Joshua James in or around January 2020 that he had no information showing that JG received packages at Taylor's apartment. And during the post shooting call in April or May 2020, JM again told Joshua James that he was unaware of any information that JG had received packages at Taylor's apartment. 2. After having been told by 2 officers from the Shelby Police Department in April 2020 that JG had not received packages at Taylor's home, Joshua James wrote in an investigative letter that he had verified through JM of LMPD, who contacted the Postal Service, that JG had been receiving packages at 3003 Springfield Drive, number 4. 3. In or around April 2020, Joshua James and KG included in the investigative letter the misleading claim that a detective was able to verify through Clear, a law enforcement database, that as of February 20, 2020, JG used 3003 Springfield Drive, number 4, as his residence. Joshua James and KG both knew at the time that this statement was misleading because, as they knew, JG did not live at 3003 Springfield Drive in February 2020. 4. From on or about April 11, 2020 through on or about May 1st, 2020, KG reviewed a draft of the investigative letter sent to her by Joshua James containing the claim that JM had verified that JG had received packages at Taylor's address. Knowing that the statement was false, KG failed to change the statement or object to it. KG later signed the letter, which included this false statement. 5. On or about May 1st, 2020, Joshua James and KG signed and submitted the investigative letter that they had jointly drafted about PBI's investigation that led to the search warrants that were served on March 13, 2020. At the time, Joshua James and KG knew that the letter contained false and misleading information that purported to link Breonna Taylor to JG, and that the letter omitted information that would have undermined the claim of an ongoing connection between Taylor and JG. 6. On or about May 17, 2020, after media outlets reported that a postal inspector had announced that JG had not received packages at Taylor's address, as alleged in the Springfield Drive warrant affidavit and the May 1st, 2020 investigative letter, Joshua James texted KG that a criminal investigator wanted to meet with him the following day and arranged to meet with KG in Joshua James' garage that night. 7. When Joshua James and KG met in the garage on the evening of May 17, 2020, Joshua James relayed to KG that they needed to get on the same page because they could both go down for putting false information in the Springfield Drive warrant affidavit. No shit. 8. During the meeting in the garage, Joshua James and KG agreed to tell investigators a false story, claiming that JM had told them in January 2020 that JG was receiving packages at Taylor's home. 9. On or about May 19, 2020, 2 days after the garage meeting, Joshua James falsely claimed to investigators with LMPD's Public Integrity Unit that in January 2020, JM had told him and KG nonchalantly that your guy, JG, just gets Amazon or mail packages there at Taylor's home. 10. On or about August 12, 2020, KG falsely told investigators with the Kentucky Office of the Attorney General that in January 2020, JM in passing had told KG and Joshua James that he verified JG was getting packages there at Taylor's home. 11. On or about June 14, 2022, during an interview with agents with the FBI, Joshua James falsely claimed that in January 2020, JM made a nonchalant comment that JG was getting mail or Amazon packages at Taylor's home, all in violation of Title 18 United States Code, Section 371. The grand jury further charges count 3, falsification of records in a federal investigation. On or about May 1st, 2020, in the Western District of Kentucky, Joshua James, acting in relation to and in contemplation of a matter within the jurisdiction of the FBI, an agency of the United States, knowingly falsified a document with the intent to impede, obstruct, and influence the investigation and proper administration of that matter. Specifically, Joshua James falsified an investigative letter which he knew would be used in a criminal investigation into the preparation and execution of the Springfield Drive warrant at Breonna Taylor's home, by including false and misleading statements about the connection between Taylor and the alleged drug trafficking, and by omitting material information that undermined the claim of an ongoing connection, all in violation of Title 18 United States Code, Sections 1519. The grand jury further charges count 4, false statement to federal investigators. On or about May 17, 2022, in the Western District of Kentucky, Kyle Meany knowingly and willfully made a materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statement and representation in a matter within the jurisdiction of the FBI, an agency of the executive branch of the government of the United States. Specifically, Kyle Meany falsely told an agent with the FBI that a paragraph requesting authority to make a no-knock entry at Taylor's home was included in the Springfield Drive warrant affidavit because officers on the LMPD SWAT unit had, during a planning meeting on or about March 5th, 2020, asked for a no-knock authority at that location. In truth, and in fact, Kyle Meany knew that the SWAT did not ask PBI to request a no-knock entry at 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment 4, all in violation of Title 18 United States Code, Section 1001. So that's the end of the 2 affidavits and the press release. So we can open it up to conversation now. Let's get some people on stage. How you doing, April? Dat Negro, Sav, Marcus, how you doing? Brother from Ohio, Inspired. Tarek, Detroit, sending everybody mics. Nemo, Brandy, and Terrence Early. All right, so that was like I said, the 2 indictments that the DOJ, Department of Justice, put out, as well as the press release that the Department of Justice put out. So let's open it up for conversation. What are your thoughts? What do you think about this new information? What do you think about the charges? Do you think justice will be served? What do you think are the best next steps from the community moving forward? We'll start with Freed One.
Yeah, I want to say, okay, there's 2 parts to this. I have a downside and an upside. I'm going to give the downside first. First of all, downside is the Kentucky Attorney General. He should be disappointed. He's a huge disappointment. He could have done a lot more than he claimed he did. And he needs to be held accountable also, because I don't know if he took part in some kind of cover-up. I'm hoping all this reveals all that. Now, the upside is I'm glad there was charges that came down. That's just the beginning. And now the next step is we need to get them found guilty, and then we need to get them convicted to acceptable standards.
I definitely agree with that. I would say, in terms of justice, you're right. The Attorney General needs to be legally punished to the full extent of the law. And as well as going forward, I do think, it is a good thing that these charges were brought, but we can't just, celebrate and forget that this process is not over. This is just the beginning, and it should not have taken this long. So definitely agree with you. Let's go to April and then Sav. How you doing, April? April, you in the city? We'll go back to April. Let's go to Sav.
Hey everyone. Hi. Thank you for hosting the room. Hey Marcus. I personally don't take it as I won't. Obviously, until it's all said and done, this could just be another walk of disappointment into disappointment, especially with it being election season, and them, I guess, just wanting to possibly appease to their voting bloc in some type of way. So again, we've seen it before where they get charged and then it's dropped, right? Or again, appeals down the road and reversed. So, I mean, it took too long, right? So, and then look at the timeline. So, I mean, I really don't take it to heart. I mean, it'd be great if every murderer got charged for the crime that they did. That'd be great.
Sounds like you got caught in the matrix at the end there. But I definitely agree that everybody needs to be charged that's involved with this. I also agree that they're probably doing this because of the upcoming election. So that was a good insight. I think it's a shame that it did take this long, like you said. Like this happened in 2020, right? So 2 years for the DOJ to come to this conclusion. You know, all this information was there prior. So the information didn't change. So why didn't this information wasn't brought to bear earlier? You know, obviously Trump was president at the time and the DOJ was under him, but still, the DOJ should be able to operate and do the right thing. That's what they're charged with, and that's what they should follow through on. Sav, I'm gonna try to bring you back up, but in the meantime, let's go to Brandy. How you doing, Brandy?
I'm doing all right. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I feel like the timing is a little odd. I don't feel like it's a coincidence, but be used to galvanize people to vote for anything other than getting Daniel Cameron out of office. I feel like people should show up specifically just to vote him out and utilize this information. Everybody knew it was some shady stuff going on, but for them to reveal all this information, he did absolutely nothing. I feel like if they don't go vote for anything else, they should vote him out. But that's all I want to say.
Thank you for that, Brandy. I agree 1,000,000%. Like it's a shame, right? Because even though they took the DOJ to do put this pressure on, it could have come from the Attorney General. It could have come from within Kentucky or even within Louisville. So it is a shame, and those people need to be fired, and we can fire them with our votes. So if you're in Kentucky, I think Amaru is actually in Kentucky and Louisville. So actually, we need to link with him and see what he could do on the ground to organize that. But yeah, let's go to free one.
I agree 100% with Brandy said. And what you just mentioned about Amaru being in Kentucky, we need to link with him. We need to put together a full campaign to get to not let this man get off the hook, because he knew exactly what was going on, and he sat on that press conference and lied straight to our face.
Yeah, it's extremely shameful, and it was crazy because they really were trying to act like they were in the right when everyone knew it was just a horrible, horrible situation. So those type of people have no type of moral compass at all. And yeah, it's just that's why we need to keep track of these things and make sure people are punished accordingly. Someone on the YouTube chat said, "Good news. Just wondering if it's politically motivated to charge them, then drop charges after election." And that's basically what has been said in this space between Sav and Brandy. So I think completely. I think it's completely politically motivated, and they're really just using it as an excuse, put it that way. And that's why we have to keep track of this, because it could be that they try to act like they're doing something prior to the election, and then right after the election, they say, "Oh, we can't find anything," or the case has been dropped, or whatever it may be. They can come up with any excuse to say, "I'm white and I say so," and justice not be served. Try to bring some more people up. Feel free to come on stage if you want to speak. Um, Wanted to make sure we covered this. We put out an F&M video going over the new DOJ charges. So make sure you check that out and share that. Want to make sure that Breonna Taylor gets as much coverage as she can. And then put the link in the Jomatron to the DOJ links. So if you want to check those out later, you can do that. But yeah, seeing as I don't know, no one else wants to come up, we can start winding down. But yeah, any last thoughts before we close out?
Yeah, I would like to hear the Kentucky Attorney General word on why he didn't make these type of charges, because he is, I guess, a black man. So I don't really want to kind of throw him under the bus just yet, because like you said, this could be a political play to get him out of office, and then they put who they want in office, and then they somehow drop charges or don't find them guilty. So we kind of just want to hear his word before I throw him completely under the bus. So even though he already failed to on his part, though.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm kind of even curious whether he's a freedman or not. You know what I mean? So I don't think we investigated that. But let's go to some new speakers on stage. Go to April, then Marcus, then Inspired, then Brandon. How you doing, April?
Hey, family. My bad. I was underground charging, so
No worries.
I apologize. I couldn't come in and out.
No worries.
So let me go ahead and go to a few other people, and then I'm definitely gonna chime in.
Okay, for sure. Let's go to Marcus, then Inspired, then Brandy, then Sav.
All right. Man, there's been a lot of drama on these Twitter streets these last few days, so I'm not going to be too politically correct here. I dare any of you to go look at this man's picture, the Attorney General of Kentucky, and give him any benefit of the doubt. The brother is coon as coon it could be. I mean, there's no denying it. As somebody who used to live in Lexington for half a second, I'm like, I promise you, dude is super coon. Kentucky ain't got much hope. Y'all got to get down there. It's only two spots you can really beat. That's Lexington and Louisville. So if y'all got brothers down in Louisville, go support them. That's a lot where a lot of the noise is made. It's a lot of.
Oh, my bad. I was trying to hit the heart. Sorry for that. I muted you.
Oh, you don't even know where I got cut off. But yeah, long story short.
Everyone's down in Louisville. That's where it's happening.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of people down in Louisville, Lexington. That's where our people is at. If you've been on Kentucky, definitely go support them. They're gonna need it. But yeah, Kentucky got a lot of problems. They gotta get that dude out of office. But the problem is there's not much on the other side. It's what's the word I would use? Nepotism. Because I think it's the Bashir family. I forget. But if y'all really get into the Kentucky state politics, it's pretty much you got one family on the Democratic side, and then you got Republicans putting in whoever they want on the other side. And the Republican Attorney General, the black dude y'all talking about, he been tap dancing for them for quite a while. So yeah, I'll land there.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at his photo, I'm leaning more non-Freedman, and he's definitely a coon either way. So can't escape the coon factor. Inspired, and then Brandy, then Sav.
Hi, Chairman. Hi to the room. I just wanted to bring up the fact that didn't they locate Carol Bryant Emmett-Till's accuser or live accuser? Isn't she in Kentucky?
Yeah, she actually is in Kentucky. Daily Mail didn't disclose exactly where she is in Kentucky, but she's in Kentucky.
So I'm gonna call cap what's going on because I think it's really interesting that Daily Mail article came out. She's in Kentucky, and then all of a sudden now we get these indictments from a grand jury on these police officers. I think it's to kind of defer and deflect from the pressure that we put in for Emmett Till's family. And I don't think we need to let up off the gas on that. But I just want to bring that correlation because I have not heard anyone talking about that. But thanks. I'm going to go ahead to listener. Thanks, family.
Yeah, that's actually a great correlation inspired. I think part of it is in terms of what you said, like trying to obscure what's happening with the Emmett Till thing. It's almost as if her being in Kentucky, Carolyn Bryant being in Kentucky, made the DOJ look at Kentucky again, right? And they can't. Excuse me. You can imagine if like she gets citizen arrested or whatever the case may be. You could imagine like that's going to be a huge headline, and the DOJ is going to look even stupider, dumber, if they haven't even done anything about Breonna Taylor, and people are moving on Carolyn Bryant, right? Because you can imagine. I would hate to imagine this, but it's possible to imagine in the America we're in right now that Breonna Taylor can become an Emmett Till, meaning that 67 years later, we're still trying to fight for justice, right? So Kentucky is kind of like a hotbed of, I guess, these white supremacists are hiding out in Kentucky, right? You got the ones, like, again, in the definition of genocide, killing members of the group. We brought up hate crime killings as well as law enforcement killings, right? So you got the Carolyn Bryant, Emmett Till case, which is hate crime killing, and then you got the Breonna Taylor, which is law enforcement killing, right? So, I mean, there's like 2 acts of genocide that need to be taken care of in Kentucky right now, and the DOJ is barely moving at snail's pace. So more definitely needs to be done. Let's go to Brandy, then Sav, then Free One.
Yeah, I think that Daniel was pretty much the sacrificial lamb at this point. We all knew that they put him up there to do their bidding. There's no other reason for you to direct the grand jury to only look at specific charges. So you basically told them only focus on this, ignore everything else. So he was instructed to do that. I don't think they would give him that type of power to, make those type of decisions on his own. So I feel like that he was instructed to move how he moved. And at this point, like say with the whole Carolyn Bryant thing, they're like, okay, you're gonna have to lay on the sword for everybody else. So they put him up, and at this point, I feel like he's a sacrificial lamb. So I'll be very surprised if he even come out with a statement. He's probably gonna be trying to avoid the press at all costs at this point. He might even stop trying to run for governor.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, I definitely think this is going to put some fire behind him and kind of hopefully scare him because he needs justice too. Like you aid and abet when you, as an attorney general, don't prosecute people. You know what I mean? In the same way that these officers didn't do the right thing and they violated the constitutional rights of Breonna Taylor and Kenneth Walker, for example. The attorney general is doing the same thing, so he needs to be charged. There needs to be an indictment against him as well. Like anybody who has the levers of power to do the right thing need to be charged in connection with not doing the right thing. You know what I mean? Sav, and then Free One, then April.
So definitely give me Andrew Gill vibes, but definitely not gonna speak on nothing if we ain't heard nothing. Not trying to tarnish my name. I personally don't. That one right there really they would put the cape on for the woman. They definitely would. They would stand with her because again, 60 years. I mean, everyone has to admit that they've helped her escape from having to admit to what she's done. Like I remember, in high school, I got to meet Emmett Till's cousin, Simeon Walker, and this was in a high school trip. We went down south, did the quote-unquote justice walks, and learning about civil rights. And he told us about the night that the dudes came to the house and how invasive they was. Like, they basically talked to Simeon's dad like they were children. Like, the whole thing is just super backwards. Like, there was nothing Emmett Till's family could have done to protect him that night. Nothing. The same way with Breonna, there was nothing they could have done. Like, they're looking at that situation, like, taking it back, like, they weren't even the ones guilty at fault. There was nothing she could have done to change that whole situation. So it's just another, like, set up in stone of, like, them reminding us and trying to put us in our place of, like, this will happen and this will continue to happen because we say so. Like, and that's what, that kind of just took me, it really annoyed me because I think more so of the election. But y'all, this is why I love these spaces, getting different perspectives.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I appreciate your perspective. It's very insightful. Sorry you got cut off earlier. I think one of the things that reading through the indictments revealed is just how insidious their willingness to like lie and cover things up, and they already messed up once by lying about the creating the affidavit for the search warrant. Then they lied again after they didn't kill somebody to cover up the fact that they killed somebody. So it's just like so sickening, and it is one of those things where you realize, you really have to, arm yourself legally in this country and protect yourself by any means necessary. I think the only thing, there's this great story. I'll try to find it and tweet it out, but there's a great story about something similar happening to a boy. And the only difference between what happened to Emmett Till and what happened to this boy is uh, where this other boy was living. His father and everyone in the neighborhood had shotguns because black people weren't sold rifles. But he had everybody, all his neighbors, in their yard, like crouched down with their rifles. And then when the people came to his door to ask for his son, he came with a shotgun. You know what I mean? And kind of spooked them. And uh, once they finally left and all of that, he went out to the backyard and I think he spun the gun around like 4 times or something, and then all his neighbors like rose up out of the grass. Like I'm like, that's boss. You know what I mean? Like that's what type of time we have to be on in terms of like protecting each other. Because what they knew was going to happen is that they were going to be approached by an angry white mob. You know what I mean? So they didn't know how big the mob would be, how armed they would be, but they were ready to ensure that safety was preserved. Um, but yeah, so and obviously in the case of Breonna Taylor, that was just pure like an assassination. They ran in there, kind of shooting, guns blazing, shot through the freaking screen door and the curtain. They were there to kill. So yeah, it's just horrible. Free one, then April.
Yeah, I just want to touch on what Inspired said. Since we're not gonna forget about that dirty white bitch. We won't forget about it. We're gonna apply pressure on her still.
Yeah, definitely. She ain't getting off the hook for this. Carolyn Bryant needs the act of genocide. If you look up the U.S. Law for genocide, it says if you kill a person, which is an act of genocide in this case because you're targeting a specific group, i.e., freedmen. If you kill someone, so the people who killed um, Emmett Till, the 2 guys who participated at least the most in the killing, they would have gotten a death penalty or life imprisonment and a fine of $1 million. And then Carolyn Bryant, who participated in the attempted conspiracy, would get the same charges as they would because if you try to attempt or conspire to do act of genocide like killing members of a group, you get all the same charges if you had completed it yourself. So she deserves life imprisonment or the death penalty if wherever she's charged in or brought to justice in has the death penalty and the fine of $1 million for both. So let's go to April, and then we'll kind of give everyone a chance for any last thoughts.
Hey, family, peace, power, and reparations to the people. This, all of this is very overwhelming. It's a lot, One thing for sure is that I think somebody said Carolyn is not getting off the hook, right? Even them two, even them two crackers that was involved, they lived and died a horrible death. Y'all should look at how they died. The correlation, and I don't know who mentioned that, but that correlation is actually because there's so many different pieces, and when you actually look at who are actually in these positions now, where were they at during this time? Who are there? This is where the delineation of a lot of things comes into play, right? Like, who are the people now? I want to know who their ancestors are. Who are their ancestors, right? Were they here? Were they not here? All of those things, I think, as well, is something we should look into. When we just dig a little deeper. I'm thinking in everybody's lineage, right? All politicians, all of those things. Because I think those answer some of those questions as well, because they use and they stay within bloodlines for the things that they do as well. But this was a lot to unpack. I'm still, will Brianna have justice? I think there's so many stories like Brianna as well, where people were in their home sleep. It's a lot of them actually. It's insane. But I do think that, all of it, there is no coincidence. And I think that everything that is happening and unfolding is something we really have to pay attention to everything and everyone involved. So I'll just land there, because this is definitely a very disturbing case for me. Just because of when it did happen, it was so much things that were happening as well. It's like it's never ending. Black exhaustion is real. There's always something. There is no coincidence. That correlation is really strong, and I really want to dig deeper in it. And Kentucky is, is as bad as Mississippi. And Kentucky is, they used to throw our babies in wood piles in Kentucky. And so that goes deep. So who are these people? You know what I'm saying? Like, who are these people? Who are their ancestors? I think those are some of the questions that we need to have answered as well, as we dig deeper. So I hope that makes sense and resonating with somebody.
Yeah, definitely. That was Inspired who brought up that connection. I think it's an interesting connection to explore, because, like, we all can understand, if you got families and lineages of people who have this type of hatred, more than likely they're in communities of people that have these types of hatred. That's why they can kind of exist for so long. And the fact that Carolyn Bryan is in Kentucky now, and then the DOJ is making charges not against freaking Carolyn Bryan, but against Breonna Taylor, right? It's like, how you gonna do one and not the other? It's kind of like some blindsidedness. So I think for sure we have to investigate the lineages, of the AG, of the people involved in Emmett Till's lynching, as well as Breonna Taylor's lynching. Super important. With that said, I'll give everyone a chance for any last thoughts. We'll start with Brandy, then go to Sam, then Free One, then April, and then we'll start closing out. Any last thoughts, Brandy?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for having this space. I think some of these conversations are needed. So it's always good to talk about real issues that's happening. That even though it doesn't necessarily affect us directly, we're all impacted in some way. So I appreciate you having this space. It's educational. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for coming, Brandy. I know it might have been a little boring reading through that stuff, but it's important that we do it. It's deep information. That's the type of stuff they don't want us to read, right? And not to be knowledgeable about. So the more we are, better we can protect ourselves and even know the processes these people go through to try to, cheat us. Sav, your turn.
Yeah, no, thank you for hosting this space, and thank you everyone, for sharing so eloquently everything that they've been having on their hearts too. Because I know I've been wanting to talk about this, especially with people who, again, this is an issue in itself that it goes deeper than. Don't take offense when it's looking at people's history, because again, ulterior motives are a thing. We know what us was about. We know that things can get flipped on us and done right in front of our noses. We know. So this is just a cautionary, thing. But also too, someone shared on Twitter, and it wasn't until like after the trip, a little like maybe a couple years after, once I got actually my freshman year, someone had basically put two and two together about Emmett Till's father, about what happened to him. His father also was killed because he was accused of, blowing a whistle at a white girl, and he served for a country. Now, when you look at, there's so many stories of our servicemen coming back home to burnt down houses and dead loved ones after serving our country, right? And that right there is a sinister case that needs to be looked at too, right? Look at dates, times, right? Because they love their symbolism and whatnot. Because it all could just be ritual. And that's why it's important that we don't allow ourselves to get caught up emotionally, because we'll play right into the act. But just reading up, doing our studies, staying focused, and sharing this with our loved ones too, whether they want to hear it or not, they're going to be happy that you shared it with them.
Most definitely. And that's actually a great connection that you brought up about his dad, because one of the things that I learned when I was going back through Emmett Till's story is, he was so excited to go see his cousins that basically, as soon as they got off the train with his mom, he basically ran upstairs, ran up the platform to basically leave. And she said, you're gonna leave without giving me a kiss? And he was like, "Oh, mama," he was kind of like, she said he scolded me, but basically she was embarrassed. He's 14, and his mom like, "You ain't give me a kiss." It's kind of like you going to school and your dad like, you know what I mean? We've all been through some similar situations probably. But anyway, so he goes back down to give his mom a kiss, and she's like, how do I know I'll ever see you again? So he gives, this is like super like cute, like Emmett Till gave his watch to his mom. He's like, "Here, hold this." So he gives her his watch, and then she's like, "Well, what are you gonna do with the ring?" Because he had his dad's ring on, because his mom had given his dad's ring, and obviously he had given his dad's ring because his dad got killed. You know what I mean? So, and he kept the ring on, and actually, this is a kind of a sad story, but when his body was found, they were able to identify it based on his dad's ring, the initials on his dad's ring. So it's kind of full circle. But anyways, like just those little details, you know what I mean? Let's go to Freed One, then April.
Yeah, my closing thoughts is thank you for this room. Thank you for the space as usual. It's been an excellent conversation and discussion, very insightful and informative. And also, my money is on Daniel Cameron's lineage of that being a Nigerian.
I'm dead. Yeah, we definitely need to do some research on him for sure. April, you're next up.
Thank you for this space. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you for always staying focused, always having spaces of intention that actually, put us into a space where we are thinking, right, and we are kind of even I know, like you said, like going through was maybe may have seemed to some maybe a little boring, but it's very digestive. It really allows us to have perspectives and things of that sort, and actually hear from other people's things, because I had not put that correlation together, and then even his father, sadly, I kind of had forgotten that happened. That's something else to look into as well, right? Because it seems as if the family was a target as well. So it's so many different things. I just appreciate it, as well as keeping our people that have actually been harmed in present day, alive, and keeping their stories discussed every day. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that compliment, April. That means a lot. Yeah, I definitely try to avoid the BS and stay focused on important stuff. All those distractions pop up to take us off our track, to stop us from getting the justice that we're deserved. You know what I mean? We don't need to be spending tons of hours in spaces arguing about things we've already solved. So please stop doing that. Um, but a few other thoughts I had just before we go. Um, One thing I noticed is that there's a lot of females in this space, and I think that is because of Breonna Taylor and what she represented. And I think a lot of people, a lot of freedmen women, identify with Breonna Taylor because they know if that can happen to Breonna Taylor, it can happen to them. It's kind of like the Emmett Till. I know what happened to Emmett Till could happen to me or to happen to anyone that's a freedman man, right? So, I think it's important, and I'm really proud that all these freedmen women came up in here to kind of hear the latest and to make sure that they're following up. I also think somebody said this earlier about what happened to Breonna Taylor in the context of there's a bunch of other people that this has happened to. So just like with Emmett Till, if we don't get justice for Breonna Taylor, we're letting their killers off the hook, and we're encouraging more killings to happen, right? So that's why it's so important for both of us, men and women, to come together to make sure that even in the case of Breonna Taylor, I'm a man, but that doesn't mean I don't care about Breonna Taylor. Like, we need to make sure our freedmen queens are protected. You know what I mean? Because that could be our mom, that could be our wife, that could be our daughter, our sister. So, um, we just got to make sure that we keep protecting each other. Please exercise your Second Amendment rights. Make sure you're protected. Make sure your family is protected. We are experiencing genocide by every definition of genocide. So this is not something we want to play with. It's essentially we're experiencing targeted war during a peacetime. So make sure you do everything you can to protect yourself. And this is kind of somewhat morbid, but Ben Crump, he's been focusing on making sure that these civil cases get awarded fairly, so that we're not getting shortchanged when our lives are being taken. And one of the things that he was able to do with Breonna Taylor is get like a record settlement for her. And so I'm bringing that up to tell you, it's disgusting to me that we don't have reparations and then we're valued at millions of dollars after our death. And so I think what we have to recognize is that we're worth millions of dollars now living, and you should protect yourself as such, protect your loved ones as such. And what you should do, like I said, is exercise your Second Amendment rights, educate people about our genocide that's happening, and do whatever you can to prevent our genocide and focus on reparations now and what we're trying to do with Freedmen Reconstruction and bringing back our institutions like the Freedmen's Bank, the Freedmen's Hospitals, Freedmen's Schools, the Freedmen's Bureau, all of that. So with that, we're going to sign off. Thank you all for coming. Tomorrow we'll be back 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern, and we're going to do a space on Tulsa and the update that happened today. We put a FNN video out on that, but we're going to spend at least an hour talking about that tomorrow. So come to that if y'all can, and let other people know. But yeah, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Breonna Taylor smiling down. and waiting for her justice. So let's make sure she gets it as fast as she can. All right, y'all. Thank y'all. And with that, peace.